Hello. So this weekend, one of my orchestras, the Symphony of Northwest Arkansas, played Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. The full movie with live orchestra. And so when I saw this movie in college, one of the things I really appreciated was that it kind of leaned into the anachronistic nature of the Harry Potter world. And one of the ways it did that is by using some quasi-Renaissance music or Renaissance sounding music. There's recorders throughout the score, and there are a couple of sections that are even suggestive of Crumhorns. In fact, in the oboe books, or the oboe and the English horn books, there's actually sections where the oboists are instructed to play a la Crumhorn. So I thought it would be fun to see what that would actually sound like on real Crumhorns. Now, if you want to find these sections, the first one is about 32 minutes into the movie. It's when Hagrid's standing outside of his hut before his first class, addressing everyone. And then there's another one about 6 minutes later, after Hagrid's class, as the ghosts are running into the Great Hall. There is a third one towards the end, once again in the Great Hall, but this is actually a repeat of music from the second section. Now, the thing about using Crumhorns is they're very limited. The range of each Crumhorn historically was a major ninth. Modern reproductions usually have one or two additional keys that extend the range upwards a little bit, kind of analogous to clarinet throat keys. And they don't overblow at all. And since they're a cylindrical instrument, they actually sound an octave lower than a recorder of the same approximate size would sound. Now, the side effect of that is the Crumhorn is actually fairly low. This is a alto Crumhorn. This is a modern reproduction, which means it's an F. Historically, the alto Crumhorn was actually a whole step higher in G. But even though it's a pretty small instrument, this plays down to the lowest range of the English horn. So the low F on a alto Crumhorn is the same as a low C on an English horn. The soprano Crumhorn is tiny. The length of the instrument that actually has tone holes is about as long as a piccolo. But once again, it plays down to the lowest register of the oboe, down to a low C. Now, if we look at this first cue from Harry Potter, we'll see a problem pretty quick. The part is rather high for Crumhorns. So the second line is entirely playable on soprano. But the top line, that last note, that F sharp, just isn't on the instrument. So even if you had a soprano with two keys, mine only has one, but if it had two keys, it could get up to the F, but not the F sharp. Interestingly, if you take this passage and transpose it down an octave, it actually works beautifully on alto and tenor Crumhorn. And I should say, historically, even though now we think of the soprano as a kind of a basic member of the Crumhorn family, historically it was actually pretty uncommon. A historic Crumhorn consort would probably consist of or most likely consist of an alto, 2 tenors, and a bass. And if there were an extra instrument, it was probably more equally likely to be a great bass, even larger than the bass that I have here, as it was to be the tiny soprano. So transposing this down an octave and playing it on alto and tenor is historically more of the range that you would expect crumhorns to play together in. And what I find really fascinating, and I'd love to get an answer, but I have no idea how, other than to just phone John Williams or his orchestrator. It works so well on crumhorns an octave lower. I have to wonder if it was originally written with crumhorns in mind and only later transposed up an octave. The recording in the movie is whatever instruments are playing, they do a very good job of sounding like crumhorns, even though it's in the a little bit high. So I don't know what they used, but I'd be very interested to find out. Our oboist this weekend actually had a lot of fun figuring out how to play a la crumhorn. They did a fantastic job, despite the fact that it was 50 degrees outside, and they were all using their backup instruments. They were playing on blanks. They were putting pretty much the entire reed in their mouth. Some of them actually removed their bell for that section. Anyway, so this is what this passage would sound like on alto and tenor. So the next question is there any way to play it in the higher octave, the octave that was written? Well, in this example, the only problem is that final note, the F sharp. So we can cheat just a little bit. The crumhorn, like I said, is not supposed to overblow. However, these extra keys, depending on the reed, can sometimes overblow. Now, but since this is a cylindrical instrument, that means it overblows like the clarinet, an octave in a 12th, or a 12th, or an octave in a 5th, as opposed to an octave. So, with that in mind, we would need a low B in order to overblow a 12th to that F sharp. So, what I can do, through a combination of things, you might notice the crumhorn has these extra holes that you don't actually play, but if I cover one of those up, that's going to lower the low C to an A. And then I can add this key, which on this instrument with this reed happens to overblow a 12th. And it's a little bit, it's flat. It's more like an F. That's because kind of like the bassoon, well, the crumhorn was never, the instrument nor the reeds were designed to be in tune when you overblow. So what I can do is take this reed, push it in all the way, put the cap on, and I can get my F sharp. So here is what this passage sounds like on a soprano crumhorn trio. So soprano on top, soprano on bottom, and then my prepared cheaty Crumhorn playing just that F sharp at the end. So let's go ahead and move on to the second a la Crumhorn passage. Now this one presents an even greater problem. If we look at the second line actually is perfect for soprano Crumhorn, discounting the fact that having the soprano Crumhorn on the bottom line is a little bit odd. But if you take it down an octave, it works just as well on tenor. Now this top line is a little bit weird. It goes up to an A above the staff, which is, even if you take it down an octave, it's a little bit high for alto. For a modern reproduction of alto in F, it requires the use of these keys. Oddly enough, though, it would actually have worked perfectly on a historical alto in G. So once again, this calls in the question of, was this actually written with real Crumhorns in mind? Historical, a pair of Crumhorns, an alto in G and a tenor in C, and then it just got transposed. Another possibility is that it was originally written for a soprano Crumhorn in C on top, and then a reproduction alto in F on bottom, and at some point it got transposed a fifth higher. But I do have this key. So this is what this passage sounds like. Oh, sorry. The top line, even an octave lower, wouldn't work on soprano because of these low A's and low B's. Anyway, so this is what this passage would sound like, an octave lower. So once again, is there any way that to record this in the intended octave? The cheats I used on the last one really aren't going to work here. You might be able to squeak out a few notes, but you're not going to get the E, F sharp, G sharp, A up above the staff. It's just not going to happen on a soprano Crumhorn. What you would really need, remember I talked about the old alto in G. What you would really need in order to play this passage in the written octave is a sopranino Crumhorn in G. Now, unfortunately, that instrument simply doesn't exist. And I just don't think there's anything we can do about that. I'm just kidding. You all know me. Here is a sopranino Crumhorn in G that I 3D printed the other day. It is ridiculously tiny, almost as small, if you look closely. You can see that I had to offset the tone holes just in order to be able to fit my contrabassoonist fingers over the tone holes. And even then, it's a challenge. Now, I cheated a little bit. I'm going to be honest. Soprano Crumhorn reeds are about some of the most evil things I've ever had to work with. Making this reed and having it actually play is probably the hardest reed is the most difficult reed I've ever made in my entire life. And one of these days when this reed dies, I'm going to be incredibly sad because it's going to be really hard to remake this. So I made the sopranino. I designed it to accept a soprano Crumhorn reed. And I just planned on putting it in as far as it'll go. Put the cap on. And we have what may be the first sopranino Crumhorn in G. Now, I say maybe. It's such an obvious concept that I would be surprised if no one has made one before, but I can't find any evidence of it. What I can imagine is someone, at some point in the past, maybe had a little bit too much of whatever substance and got in front of a lathe and made a sopranino Crumhorn, and then woke up the next morning, realized the madness they had created, and destroyed all evidence of it. But I'm a fan of the absurd, and this definitely qualifies as absurd. Anyway, so, without further ado, here is that second a la Crumhorn passage in the original octave on Crumhorns with a sopranino Crumhorn in G on top. And here are a few notes of the instrument by itself. I'm going to back away from the mic so it doesn't explode. And I'm going to make a prediction right now. Someone at this moment is going down in the comments to say, now where's the Gark line? Here it is. So there is the soprano, the nice soprano, the surprisingly not awful sopranino, and I just think it looks cute, and I don't consider it a real instrument Gark line. You can see the holes are even closer together. I can't even play it. I attempted to make a reed for it, or to modify one of my failed soprano Crumhorn reeds to work for it. So here is the soprano reed that I'm also using for the sopranino, and here is the Gark line reed I was attempting to work with. But even if I had tiny hands to play the Gark line, I would still need to do a lot of reed work, and I don't think it's worth it. Here, let's see if I can play something reasonably close to a G. Oh, it was an F sharp. Let's see if I can. C sharp instead of C, and finally the top C. Well, that was almost in tune. So there it is, all of the sarcastic people asking where the Garp line is. Here it is, and that may be the last time it ever gets played. And with that, the matter of Harry Potter and the Missing Crumhorn has been resolved. Now, I know what many of you are thinking right now, if you're subscribed to this channel. Okay, it's a tiny Crumhorn. So what? What does this have to do with the subcontra bassoon? Well, I'll tell you what it has to do with the subcontra bassoon. Having made this, it means that I have to work extra hard to get the subcontra bassoon prototype playable as soon as possible. And the reason for that is I don't want my legacy to be the guy that created this evil. A footnote in the history of musical instruments would be nice, but the sopranino Crumhorn is not the footnote I'm looking for. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a great day.